It's 2025, a new year, a fresh start. But in East Asian philosophy, there's no true start or no true end. Present is the consequence of the past, and the future is the consequence of the present. No wonder karma is considered one of the backbones of Asian worldview. Even though the word karma in the modern internet culture has narrowed down to getting the consequence one deserves, but the true meaning of karma is ultimately everything is linked and nothing happens for no reason. In that regard, as the first episode of the new year, I collected stories about the previous life and reincarnation. I already dealt with the subject once in my episode 73. If you missed it, I'll leave the link in the description and at the corner of the screen. Comparing to the first episode, stories in this episode are somewhat smaller in scale, but in a sense they are more relatable and provide easier picture as how the topic of the previous life and reincarnation is understood in Korea. So, here are 6 allegedly true stories about the previous life and reincarnation. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by a host, Anthony. There lived a young couple. They were all around pretty ordinary but fairly happy couple. But the wife had rather odd quirk. She would often hit her husband, not in a "I'm gonna hurt you" way, but you know, some people have a habit of tapping on the shoulder or back of the person next to when they get excited or as they burst into big laughter, or poked aside when they try to get an attention. So it wasn't anyway malicious, but the wife's friendly tap and poke was bit too vigorous, bit too hard, enough to make others wonder if she wasn't expressing something more than just a friendly enthusiasm. But the couple got on well. They didn't fight or quarrel more than any usual married couple, nor the wife showed a violent streak in any other way either. The only weird thing was the wife didn't behave that way with anybody else, not even with her closest friends. But then one day, husband felt wife's beating got a bit too sharp to just endure with a smile. "Ow, ow, that's too hard. Tell you what, if you can't contain your excitement, why not beat this cushion here instead?" he suggested. But the wife's reaction was nothing either of them expected. She really started beating on the cushion, punching it hard, throwing books and remote at it. She got more and more excited and shouted, "What? You can't even take it this much? But I've got so much more! Shut up and take it! Take it!" When shouting turned into angry crying. Wife herself couldn't deny something wasn't right with her. What was going on? The couple sought some relationship therapy, but it only made them more confused because they really didn't have any other real issue and couldn't find the source of wife's hidden anger. All the effort was in vain, and wife even suffered some stress-induced hair loss. One day, they went to a Buddhist temple hoping to gain some inner peace. They happened to run into the abbot of the temple. The abbot took a good look at the couple and said, "I see some tangled karma between you two. I guess you were a married couple in the previous life too. Unfortunately, not a happy one. The husband was violent and beat the wife to death. Now, having met as a couple again in this life, the anger and resentment from that life is permeating." But what should they do now? This wasn't the kind of anger wife could just control and forget. But should she just let it express itself in an increasingly violent way, it would only further tangle the karma between them, and the two would be repeating the same in the next life too. The abbot's solution? was a small broomstick made with branches of bush clover. Every stroke from the broom made with hundreds of branches would equate to 100 strokes, and that way the old resentment might get quenched quickly with the least damage. The couple found the abbot's idea dubious, but thought to give it a try anyway, since they didn't have any other better solutions. The wife used the broom whenever she felt the urge to beat her husband, and gradually she felt the whip, and indeed the broomstick itself, getting heavier for her. After some time, even just a couple of whip felt laborious enough to leave her pant for air. The couple reported it back to the abbot. The abbot said that should mean the karma from the previous life finally resolved, took the broomstick back and burnt it with a little chant. Wife, watching it burn, somehow couldn't stop her tears. But afterwards, her weird habit of beating her husband was no more, and the couple resumed their ordinary but happy life together. This evening, Mom came home drunk. She must have had some good time with her work colleagues after work. Dad happened to be away on a business trip, so they are just Mom and I home. She called me over to the living room and told me to sit next to her on the sofa. Oh well, here she go again, I thought. When Mom gets drunk, she would often do this and tell me, "You know how much I love you, son? You should marry soon, have a lovely daughter and son, and make a happy family of your own." And so on, again and again and again, on repeat for good 1 hour. Well, but I'm a good son, and sat next to her as I was told. But for once, she talked about a different thing. "You know, my baby, do you know you had another brother?" she said. I do have one older brother, but what she explained wasn't what I knew about and shocked me a little. She gave birth to a second child a year before I was born. Shortly after they were back home from the hospital, Mom fell asleep next to her newborn son and got up to breastfeed him in the early hours of the morning, only to find the baby's lips turned blue. Most strange thing was, while Mom was talking about the tragic day, I started getting a vision in my mind, like snapshots of the day. Mom carried on how she shook the baby, but it was too late. The commotion woke Dad up too, and upon finding the baby gone, he bewailed. "Mom, did Dad happen to sit by the door as he cried?" I said. Mom seemed to be surprised to my unexpected question. "Well, he did. He sat on the threshold and cried lamentably," she said. "And didn't the threshold set high above the ground outside? High enough for his feet not to touch the ground? And, didn't he wear blue jogger trousers then?" I just got those images in my mind. Mom's eyes got even bigger and could only say, Yes. How do you?" My vision continued, and I had to carry on asking. "Didn't you bury the dead baby, wrapped up in a piece of clothing?" Mom couldn't even say anything, and just burst into tears. I, too, couldn't stop tears running down. Logically, it doesn't make any sense at all. How could I get such a clear vision of the day a year before I was even born? And And until today, I didn't even know about the existence of my second brother. Could I be the dead baby reincarnated? Time's passing 4 a.m. and I have to go to work in the morning, but I can't fall asleep now. My aunt told me this story as happened to a family relative. My dad's home village is a clan village of his family clan, meaning the majority of the inhabitants were blood relations in one way or the other and kept a very close bond. The protagonist of the story would be a distant great aunt to me, but I'll just call her Granny for the ease of the storytelling. By the time of the story, all her children were grown-ups and married. But one son she lost to leukemia some 50 years ago. We say a mother buries her dead child in her heart. I'm sure the lost boy remained as a little hole in her heart even after all those years. One day, the dead son appeared in her dream. That was the first time in 50 years too. "My boy, my dear boy, why haven't you come to visit me earlier? You know how I've missed you," Granny said. "But Mom, you can always see me again if you so miss me. I live now at the foot of the XYZ mountain. Come and see me," her son said. Granny didn't understand what he meant and was left confused. Then her late husband and the father of the boy appeared and showed Granny a vision of a little farmhouse. "There lives our little boy," he said. The dream left Granny shaken. She called in her daughter and talked about the dream, and the daughter confirmed there indeed was a small village by the foot of XYZ mountain. It wasn't too far from where they lived either, so they went to visit. As they wandered around, Granny stopped at one spot. "That house, that's the house I saw in the dream," she exclaimed. In the yard of the house was playing a 6-7-year-old looking boy by himself. Upon seeing Granny, he came up and politely greeted. "Good afternoon, ma'am." Granny just felt instantly that he was the reincarnation of her little son. Suppressing overwhelming emotions, she chatted the boy up about this and that. She soon noticed a mole behind the boy's right ear about a thumbnail sized. Now she couldn't hold her tears anymore because her dead son too had the same mole at the same spot. As happy and moved as she was, she understood the boy now had his new life to live. She handed the boy some pocket money, gently patted his head, and turned around back home. Shortly after that, Granny developed dementia. My aunt thinks her dead son might have wanted to meet his mother one last time before she lost her mind at her old age. It's a story I heard from a therapist who often performs hypnotic regression. Kim is a high school student. On the surface, he seems to have nothing in his life to complain about. His father is a professor and provided more than enough for the young Kim. Both of his parents loved him a lot and supported him in every way possible. But since when? Kim felt unsuppressible anger and hate towards his father. He couldn't even stand being in the same room with him, and whenever father tried to give him an advice, Kim only felt more rebellious and wanted to do the exact opposite. He used to be a model student, but for the pure desire to make his dad distressed, Kim started skipping school, ruined his grades, and even made friends with the most notorious delinquents in his school. It all could have been just his rebellious teenage angst. But neither Kim himself nor his father could understand the source of Kim's hate, and eventually sought therapy from the teller of this story. By then, Kim's father was at the end of his wits, and all he wanted was Kim to at least stay in high school till graduation. Usually, men tend to be more resistant to hypnosis, and especially teenage rebels who refuse any direction or suggestion could be troublesome. But unlike the initial concern, Kim responded easily and quickly to the therapist's hypnosis session. What the exploration of Kim's past life revealed was that he and his father were husband and wife. Son the wife, father the husband. In that life, husband never cared for his family and home and spent most of his time wandering around and committing countless affairs. In the chauvinistic social milieu of the time, the wife had not much choice but endure. She hated her husband so much that she could have easily killed him if she could. But for the sake of her children, she kept all the fire inside, just silently mumbled to herself, Someday I shall have my revenge and make you shed tears as bitter as I have shed." But that day never came till the end of her life. But the tangled karma doesn't just disappear, and it has resurfaced in the current life. It is often said one's child is the debtor from the previous life. It's just a way to say how much parenthood calls for sacrifice, but this was definitely an extreme case. Understanding the source of the anger helped Kim a lot to control it, and Kim managed to steer his life back on a normal track, even though it did take longer till he could recover the relationship with his father. This should be the scariest sleep paralysis episode I have ever experienced. I was sleeping then on my side as usual. Then I sensed a chill and squinted my eyes and saw a man lying next to me in a fetal position. He was staring at me. But I often have weird dreams and sleep paralysis, so I just ignored and closed my eyes to sleep.
"Oi, your alarm is ringing,"
the man said, which made me open my eyes. And just a couple of seconds later, indeed, the alarm I set on my phone went off. But that was for the weekday's schedule, and it was Sunday, so I just turned it off and fell back to sleep.
"Oi, you're getting a call,"
the man said again, which made me open my eyes once again too. And just a few seconds later, my phone rang. It was my grandma. She sometimes phones on Sunday morning to tell me not to waste morning because it's Sunday. But after I hung up, I closed my eyes thinking, 30 minutes more.
"Oi, it rains and thunders,"
he said again. I didn't bother to open my eyes this time, but again, just a few seconds later, I heard a low rumble of a thunder from afar, and heavy rain started dropping. Somehow I got irritated. Whatever that man was, he was kept disturbing my Sunday morning sleep. I didn't open my eyes, but frowned hard as to silently tell him, "Shut up." But the man didn't notice or didn't care, because he said this time,
"Oi, do you know why you get a heartburn all the time?"
I was a bit surprised because that was true. I was born with a sensitive stomach, and I often suffered various tummy issues, including frequent heartburn. But how did he know that about me?
So you don't remember? You really don't?
The man said with an amused tone. And I wondered, what the heck does he mean? What should I remember? He cackled in a cracking husky voice and said,
You ended your previous life by swallowing poison. You don't remember? That's why.
I stood up from bed, wide awake. And the man wasn't there anymore. Maybe it was just a bad sleep paralysis or a nightmare. Maybe it was just a random ghost that tried to trick me with a false claim. But if what he said were true, then what would have that man been to me in my previous life? A few years ago, I stayed in a hospital for a bad back. The director of the hospital was quite a character, very sociable. He quickly made friends with all the patients in the ward, and he was learning hypnosis too. Life in a hospital is boring, so when the director suggested that he could perform a hypnotic regression session on me, I said why not? Fellow patients got all curious too and gathered around to watch. I didn't think it would actually work. I did watch people doing hypnosis and stuff on TV, but always thought it was all fake. I even plotted to prank the director with some false stories. But once it started, I quickly fell into a half-asleep state. It's hard to explain, but my current ego felt to be pulled back to one corner of my brain and became a mere passive observer. I started replying to the director's questions despite of myself. As I said, it felt like I was observing myself from the third person's point of view, and I thought, how articulate I had become. Curious. Soon, a vision opened up to me. No, it was more than just a vision because I could actually sense everything. The sensation of me walking and even the smell in the air. Director's first question was what the most memorable day in my previous life was. It transferred me onto a field of wheat. I was walking along the huge field that stretched as far as my eyes could see. Above it was such a beautiful blue sky. Apparently, I in the previous life was a college student in the US. It was during World War II, and my older brother volunteered himself in the army, and sadly he was one of the first victims in the Pearl Harbor attack. Loss of brother prompted me to give up my study and volunteer myself to fight. And in that memorable day, I was walking through the beautiful field on my way home to announce my decision to my parents. Now, the director suggested me to think of the last day of my previous life. I was in a battleship. The tension in the air meant we were on the way for a battle indeed. Everything felt so real. The inside of the ship, faces of other soldiers and officers. The soldier next to me looked even younger than myself. Apparently he was still a minor, but lied about his age to roll in. He talked about entering university when the war was over, and I talked about what the college life was like from my own experience. Suddenly, the ship jumped with a dull thud. We were confused because it would take a bit longer before we got to our destination. Noises of people shouting were heard from the control room above, among which I picked up words like sinking and capsizing. An officer ran down and ordered us to disembark and charge forward. We did as we were told, but just a few steps forward, I felt a grave shock to my back and fell into the water. I was shot. I could not move my legs, and the loud shouts of officers were only heard as muffled barks in my ear. All I could think was, I didn't want to die. Please help, let me live. I don't know how much time passed. It was quiet all around, except for the splashing footsteps approaching me. Who flipped me around was a Japanese soldier. I was still alive. I was going to be a prisoner of war, but still alive. But I was wrong. The Jap stabbed my shoulder with a knife. I screamed, and he responded with a shot to my head to finish me off. At that point, I screamed. It felt like I was choking and losing breath. Mommy, Mommy, help me. I don't want to die, Mommy. Let me live. Director quickly guided me to go further back in time to my childhood. It calmed me down. I described the family home and its surrounding, the pie Mommy used to bake for my brother and me, Dad, who'd get violent when he got drunk. One point it got so bad that one day the town's sheriff stepped in and threatened Dad that he would take care of Dad should he dare to beat young boys again. It made Dad stop drinking. My brother looked up the sheriff, and that was one of the motivations for him to join the army. As for me, I had a girlfriend in college, a girl I fell in love at first sight at the college library. She buffed me at first, but my perseverance won her heart in the end. And she was a Japanese American. She opposed when I said I was going to roll in the army, but couldn't keep insisting when I said I had to do the duty as an American and also for the honor of my brother. I asked her if she would marry me when I return, and she said yes with tears, that she would wait, so I must come back. But I failed to come back to her. Director asked me why I reincarnated in Korea, and I said to stay closer to Japan, where my girlfriend returned to after the war.
Well, even if she's still alive, she should be very old now. Might be difficult to see her again,
Director said, and to that I said that I knew it too, but I would wait. However long it should take, one day we would reunite again in whichever future life. She was my destiny, and I wouldn't marry anybody else. At that point, Director woke me up from the hypnosis. He was clearly very excited that it was the best session he'd ever tried. He said he wanted to try again soon and learn more about my previous life, but unfortunately, we didn't have time before I discharged. Shortly afterwards, I happened to accompany my friend to a shaman to have our fortune told. She said, I had a love of my destiny, but our paths didn't quite align. Since I had already met the destiny and was deeply in love, my mind was still stuck with that love.
You won't find your other half in this life,
she said. The whole experience and the shaman's words was stuck in my mind. And one day I made some research about the battles in the Pacific during World War II and found the record of one particular battle, of how it began, somehow matched what I saw during the hypnosis. But I had to stop there because panic attacks rendered me breathless. One day, I had a dream. I was standing in a dark void of a space. From afar, an old white gentleman walked towards me. He stopped still a good few meters away from me and stared at me. His eyes filled up with tears.
"You are here. You've been here all the while,"
he said and sobbed. I couldn't say anything, but just felt I knew him from a long time ago. He was that young soldier who sat right next to me on the battleship.
"Now I have to go. We met again after so many years, but have to part again,"
said the man, tears still streaming down. I wanted to say something to him, but I couldn't open my mouth, as if my lips were glued shut. The moment he walked past me, it got all bright and then slowly back down to dark void. And I woke up with my pillow wet with tears. Frankly, I still don't exactly know how to perceive the entire experience. It might be all false, but I think it might not be. Though there's nothing much I can do even in that case. Hi, it's Anthony here, and Happy New Year for you all. I hope you enjoyed the first episode of 2025. It's only human that we sometimes hate, mistreat, or even love and obsess over each other. Karma helps us to take a step back from it all and have an overview. Should everything have a consequence and its impact carry on beyond this life, wouldn't we all tread through our life more thoughtfully, treat with each other more care, and keep our mind more serene? Past all the hustle and bustle of the holiday season and the new year, I hope this episode gave you a little time to sit back and contemplate. If you enjoyed my work, please leave me a thumbs up and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. If you'd support me more directly, I have a Buy Me a Coffee account, the link's in the description, and there's also a Super Thanks option here on YouTube for a small donation. Thank you. Did you all have a fun holiday season? Mine was boring as usual. Well, life carries on, and I'll be back next Sunday. Stay safe and take care.